Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls out there in the beautiful round world. I'm doing something now which is quite different. I'm going to be reviewing the film reviewers, starting with Chris Stuckmann. I've never been a big fan of film critics and film reviewers. I know that's ironic, and it's not him, it's all of them. And even though it's ironic, well, if I didn't have a differing opinion to the film critics, what would be the point in me having a film review channel, right? There wouldn't be any point if I said the same stuff they say. Now, he's going to be reviewing Transformers, the animated movie, the 80s original. This is one of my favorite films. I haven't seen this review. That's why I'm going to do it. So I thought if I'm going to watch it, might as well watch it with you guys. Let's get on with it.
You got the touch. You got the power. Transformer.
Alright, I'm just going to say... Fuck it, let's carry on.
There's more than meets the eye. Yeah. Transformer.
Alright, yeah, so I'm just going to say... not hating on Chris, but on kind of the whole vibe that a lot of people will do this, where they take old things from the 80s and they they become very cynical about it and they make fun of it like it's all just stupid and it's all silly and it's all there just to be laughed at. But the reality is the song he's poking fun at, you got the touch, you got the power, yeah, right, that is a really good song. And it's hard, like I've written a lot of songs, it's hard to write songs like that, okay? If you think about there's a song in the film called Dare, written by Stan Bush, okay? Dare to believe you can survive. Right, that is incredible. If you've ever been depressed or sad, or just feeling really like underground emotionally, that is a very powerful, uplifting song. So much so that I remember reading a comment on YouTube by somebody who said that they were like a chronic alcoholic and they'd suffered terribly from alcohol abuse, abusing themselves with alcohol. And they said that they'd come off alcohol and were clean. And one of the ways they got clean was they listened to that song every single day to give them the belief, the self-belief, to incentivize them into believing that it was a guy, that he could overcome that internal obstacle and very serious addiction. And that's the kind of effect that music can have. You know, the lyrics are simple, but with that powerful a melody behind it, which Stan Bush, being that brilliant a songwriter, and he wrote it for that film, it's really like, what is it? Dare to believe you can survive. You hold the future in your hand. You know, it's great stuff. So I kind of think if you can't do it yourself, don't mock it, celebrate it. And I think too many people mock it. So it's not just Chris I'm saying that to, but people in general. It's all good to have fun, but tease it and then say, oh, actually it is really good though.
There's commercial in disguise. They sold a lot of toys with this one.
Okay, yeah, so he says Transformers commercial in disguise. Yeah, it was a big commercial. Almost every 80s kids cartoon was a commercial. But even though that's a running joke, I do say, so what? Like, it was great seeing your favorite toys on the screen. Like, what could be better than that for a kid? And those cartoons would take like sometimes 4, 5, 6 months to animate a single episode. Right, they'd have 20 studios all working at the same time so that in 6 months or a year they have 20 episodes ready to release. What an incredible gift to kids who just wake up on a Saturday morning and watch these shows that are just made for them. I mean, it's unbelievable. So again, people make fun of the toy thing, but if you're a kid and your favorite characters are on the screen and you're playing with them and making your own stories with the action figures, I wouldn't make fun of it. I think it's an amazing thing, actually. But that's just me.
Wow, this is kind of a cool set, actually. It's almost like I built it by hand or something.
Okay, so he's praising his own set.
I really like
It is better than my set. Can't, you know.
I feel comfortable.
That's true.
How you guys doing?
All right, Chris, how are you?
Older movie reviews.
Thanks for telling us.
I wanted to have a dedicated set for classic movie reviews since I've had such a great time talking about so many different.
I like his Snoopy shirt. That's cool.
Films over the years with you guys. I thought it'd be cool to have a special place just for that. And since Transformers: The Last Night is right around the corner, I thought it'd be a lot of fun to talk about the original 1986 animated film that was theatrical, The Transformers: The Movie.
Trying to stabilize his camera.
Kind of just wishes it was called Transformers: The Movie, but it's The Transformers: The Movie.
I have a DVD of it that says Transformers: The Movie, but I think he's right. I think it is The Transformers: The Movie, but yeah, I agree with him if that's the case, but whatever. Oi.
It's a real problem for me. So a giant planetary robot voiced by none other than Orson Welles.
Look at that! Look at that! See that planet? The colours of that. I want to rewind it, but this TV is a bit buggy. Those colours, that is hand-painted animation by the top animators, not only in the world of the time, some of the best animators of all time, because they don't animate things today like they did back then. They don't hand paint, they click the colours on. And that sequence which he just showed is I mean, he might talk about it himself, but the way it's paced, the way that music, it begins very slow. It goes and it's all slow and visual, and it really builds and builds and builds. It's but yeah, spectacular visuals.
Braun is destroying planets, and the Decepticons are in the middle of an all-out war against the Autobots. You can tell this movie is heavily inspired by anime. In fact, a lot of stores put it in the...
It's not inspired by anime. It is anime. It's animated in Japan. I think it's Tokyo Movie Shincha. I remember as a kid I used to watch the end credits of the movie on a loop. I just repeat it because the heavy metal Transformers theme would play over it, and I love that song. And it was just one Japanese name after Japanese name, thousands of them, those Japanese animators, and it is anime. It's not inspired by anime.
Anime section, because it looks quite a bit like every major Japanese anime that was coming out of Japan in the 80s.
Because it's made by them.
Is probably my favorite aspect of this movie, despite the fact that it is fairly dated. There's a lot of times where the mouth movement of the robots just don't really mesh up with what the actors are saying. Speaking of those actors...
What do you mean dated? It's not dated. The mouth movements, like, I don't know what he expects. They're robots. Like, Optimus Prime doesn't even have a mouth. It's just like that mask he has on that kind of vibrates and rumbles when he talks. Some of the robots, it's just like lights on their mouth. Like, I don't know what he's referring to here.
Leonard Nimoy voiced Galvatron. He's pretty cool in this movie. Of course, the incomparable Peter Cullen doing Optimus Prime is probably the best thing your ears can possibly hear. But interestingly,
yeah.
Orson Welles voiced Unicron. This was his final film role before his death, and it's my understanding that he wasn't really a big fan of the movie, which I can understand, but at the same time,
I don't know that anyone really knows for sure what he thought. Orson Welles was highly, highly intelligent, and I seriously doubt that he didn't at least hold some appreciation for the art form of hand-painted animation. He might well have questioned what is this future generation and what are they into and is it good and is it bad, but I mean, I'm only speculating here, but I don't think he would have completely and totally, you know, just been against it. He's been in worse films as far as I'm concerned.
Really sure what he thought of when he signed on to play.
The question is, has Orson Welles been in better films? And I say that as Citizen Kane is one of my favourite films. So
giant
it's
robot
a joke,
planet.
But, yeah.
I'd say if you're a huge fan of the Transformers TV show, this movie's going to be amazing. I kind of view it like that X-Files movie, actually. It bridged the gap between Season 5 and Season 6 just fine, but if you're kind of walking into it, you might think this is entertaining.
As a kid, like, I saw it, like, kind of standalone. And what he's referring to, the X-Files movie, which came between Season 5 and 6, Fight the Future, was that film was designed specifically to cater to fans of the show and people who'd never seen the show, and it suffers for that. I still like that film, but it's not as good as some of the individual episodes of the X-Files because they tried to cater too much to those who don't know the show. The Transformers movie isn't like that. The Transformers doesn't need to be like that because it's just a story of Autobots versus Decepticons. It's an ongoing war. That's kind of all you need to know. You know, the movie begins, it is the year 2005, right? It's like the war is going on, it's carrying on, and here you go. Like, it's it just begins in war and carries on in war, and that's sort of it. So you don't need to have seen the first 3 seasons of Transformers to enjoy it. I certainly didn't when I was a kid.
You hadn't seen the TV show?
Like, I didn't know that much of the show in detail. I would have seen it very much out of sequence.
You might just be like, oh yeah, it looks cool. But having seen the TV show, it definitely adds some weight. I'll be honest, I haven't seen the TV show. So watching this movie for the first time with that Shout Factory Blu-ray, I was just kind of like, well, that was, cool looking and Transformer stuff, and at least there weren't any really annoying human characters. It was just focused on the robots, which is great, actually, because having seen all the Michael Bay movies, I've had my fill of Transformers human characters, so it was nice to see a movie that was basically just the Transformers actually themselves. But I waited a long time to see this movie because from what I understand, the releases up until that Shout Factory Blu-ray weren't very faithful. There's some curse words that were edited out and censored.
They were in the UK.
Pretty much every release was full frame, and the original theatrical exhibition was 185. So
yeah, the UK releases were pretty good. I had it on videotape as a kid, and then when the DVDs came out, they had the cursing and swearing in it, and it was a surprise. But, it was in.
I waited a long time to finally see this movie, and watching the Blu-ray was probably the best experience I could have had watching it. And pretty much...
What about seeing it in the cinema? Wouldn't that be a better experience? Chris, come on, Chris. Cinema, made for the cinema.
From the opening titles of this movie...
I don't mean to sound negative. I still like Chris Stuckmann. I think he's a cool guy. I'm just saying, the cinema is surely a better experience than a Blu-ray.
That were extremely reminiscent of Richard Donner's Superman opening titles. I kind of got the vibes that this film was going for, and listening to the score is...
He's saying the opening titles are like Richard Donner's Superman. They weren't all like that. There are 2 versions of the opening titles to the Transformers movie. I forget why, but I remember it surprising me again because the videotape version was different to the DVD version. So that is just one version, and the other, it's preference, what you prefer. I think the others is closer to like Star Wars style.
Especially, you cannot escape that this is a 1980s movie. And it's not really a surprise to me that the composer of this movie is the same composer of Rocky IV, because these soundtracks are almost interchangeable.
Yes, awesome.
And it's most...
That was a good effect. He blended and edited that really nicely.
Just a fun enough action movie that you can watch from beginning to end, but it does have some really strange tones.
I would say the Stan Bush thing, sounding like Rocky IV, well, it was that era, and that's why he was hired, right? Like, you did that really well, can you do this really well? And that's the tone they were looking for. You can often take, like, Danny Elfman and go, okay, so here's Danny Elfman doing Edward Scissorhands, here's Danny Elfman doing Batman, and you can hear him in both of them. It's the same stuff because he's the same composer. So that's not a criticism. Like, that's they're both great soundtracks. So
that sometimes compete with each other. Like, for instance, there's this scene where this guy Kranix is in jail, and there's this kangaroo court that's being run by people who throw people who are innocent or guilty, but mostly innocent, into a pool filled with Sharkticons. Now, these Sharkticons...
It's Sharkicons. I might be wrong. Sharks. He's saying Sharkticons. I love that scene. That's one of my favourite scenes in any movie. Like, the whole film is really very dark. And that's just one of them. And that I mean, it's dark, but it's 80s sort of got the vibrancy of the 80s as well. But this court, anyway, whatever. Let's see what he says.
Eat people up, and then everyone in the court laughs, and they've had a great day. This guy Kranix is innocent, and the judge is like, "You're innocent," and then they throw him in this pool, and he gets destroyed by the Sharkticons. Now that's kind of dark. It's more dark than you would expect for a movie like this, and somebody even says "shit" in this movie. I was like, "Whoa, that's okay. I didn't expect that." But then there's a scene like where all the Transformers.
I don't know if Chris is saying. I don't know if he's saying that's a good or a bad thing. I know he's saying that it's a tonal shift, but what does he think of the actual scene with the hokey jury? Who, I mean, it's a great scene. They put an innocent person before this jury and they say guilty or innocent, and the character doesn't even get a chance to make his case. The head spins and it says innocent, and then it drops him anyway. Has the jury reached a verdict? I have. Right? It's really violent and really cruel, but it's frightening, and it's a really good scene because you've got your two main characters sitting in a cell watching this person thinking, oh shit, right? We have to try and make a case for our innocence. We are, technically innocent. We weren't trying to cause trouble, so maybe the jury will listen to us. And then right in front of them, they watch this innocent guy get called innocent and killed anyway. So it builds up all the tension for like, oh no, we're completely fucked. Like, it's an amazing scene, and the designs and everything are great. So I don't know. I don't really know. He hasn't given an opinion on the sequence. He's just saying it's kind of dark. The whole movie is dark.
Meet some people on another planet.
Like, it's dark as in they're fucking killing your favorite characters left, right, and center from like the word go.
And they just kind of form a circle and start dancing. And that scene is just hilariously out of place. I kind of loved it though, and I laughed quite a bit during it. So in that way, I'm actually fine with it. But it just doesn't really make sense. It's like, wait, someone just got devoured who didn't do anything, and now they're all dancing in a circle. It was kind of like Return of the Jedi, where like the Ewoks are so cute and everything, and then all of a sudden the Emperor's electrocuting Luke, and you're like, oh shit. It
doesn't not make sense. I mean, you have to keep in mind it's a kids' film, okay? I'm sure that most people watching this remember what it's like to watch like The Jungle Book and stuff when you're a little kid, and it seems so big, like so long, and then you watch it as an adult and it's like, oh wow, it wasn't that long and it wasn't as big as I remember it. But the film, although I still think Transformers the movie animated works really well for adults, especially if you remember it. It's not like I wouldn't take it to a film professor who's never heard of Transformers and say, watch this. But although no, I probably would actually. But it's still a children's film, and when you're a kid, that which moves very fast, your brain is just very good at absorbing all of that information. So I don't think he's keeping that in mind. And the other thing is, it is a good scene, and if you listen to the lyrics of the music being played in that scene, it's "Dare to be stupid, dare to be stupid," right? And that's the whole vibe of it, and it is fun. I don't know if he's going to mention this, but I wish he'd pay some credit to like the designs and stuff. Like, he's not talking about when they land on that planet, and it's a spiral, like a corkscrew ship that they have that rips into the soil of the planet, and he's referring to the previous scene as dark, right? But what about the opening fucking scene? Like, Unicron, the planet, destroys an entire it destroys an entire planet, and it murders an entire population. I mean, that is dark. The fucking opening scene of the film is the absolute decimation and destruction and annihilation of a planet and everyone living on it. So it doesn't get darker than that. The guilty or innocent is not a surprise. It's not like it's the first dark thing that happens. It's dark from the word go.
Just this weird mishmash of tone sometimes, but for the most part, the Transformers movie is basically made to sell some toys and to keep people interested in the animated TV show. And in that way,
I think that's a very, very cruel thing to say, to be honest. You can't take that movie and say it's just made to sell toys. They could have put any old shit in the cinema and it would have sold some fucking toys, right? It could have been bog standard. A lot of the cheap Transformers episodes were done in Korea. They could have just done that and gotten the Koreans to animate the movie cheap and fast, and it would have sold toys. I mean, it actually had a very small release, that film, and one of the reasons it's still so big and so well loved is because it's so well made. The Thundercats had a movie, Thundercats Ho. You don't hear people praising that movie to this day because that is a real mishmash, and some of it's good and some of it's very poor. And that was made to sell toys and stuff as well. But you can't discredit that the direction and the animation and the soundtrack of Transformers the movie are amazing, and more than that, it encapsulates a time period from the 80s incredibly well, and it's really the only film from an 80s kids cartoon that successfully encapsulates the vibe of the cartoon, and it's successful enough that certain moments, like you watch the introduction with Optimus Prime, the way it's animated and the music comes in and he transforms whilst doing a somersault and the camera stays low on the ground and it looks up as he's flipping and he shoots all of those robots in a single take, and then he comes around and he lands with that heroic pose, and the power of it, the weight, the way it's animated. There is so much work in the storyboarding of it, and you're literally talking about these Japanese animators who are at the peak of their game. There are people who've talked about this, how it was all these older men who'd been learning the craft of animation in Japan for years, but Japan had never really had the money to do what the directors wanted. And in the 80s, when an American company comes in and says, here's the money, do what you want, well, you're getting all these men who've spent their whole lives honing this art form, who finally have the money to actually visually do things that they've only ever dreamed about. So it doesn't matter if, you know, the studio want to get their money back through toys, because if you give it to brilliant people, they're still going to give you something brilliant. That's kind of how it works. Like, don't discredit the quality of what you're actually looking at.
Perfectly enjoyable. I would say if you have nostalgia for this movie, you're obviously going to like it a lot more than I did, because I had never seen it until now. And watching it for the first time now, I definitely enjoyed it.
I would really think that Chris, as a supposed anime fan, someone who I watched a bit of his review for the Batman, that shit Killing Joke film, and even he said the animation's horrible in this film. Why doesn't it look like, you know, older things from the 80s, which they're older but they look better? You'd think he'd at least be sitting there acknowledging how good the film looks. I'm waiting for him to say something. I hope he says it.
More than Michael Bay's Transformers movie, because as I said, there's no annoying children in this film. Well, there's one kid, but he's not really in the movie that much.
Sometimes Chris Stuckman's stuff, like, he seems like a really cool guy. I think that me and him would get along really quite well, and that this wouldn't be like an argumentative discourse. This wouldn't be a confrontational, it wouldn't be an argument. It would be a discussion and a sharing of views and opinions. And he does seem like a really lovely person. And if I had gone to school with him, I reckon we would have been the most enthusiastic film kids who both want to make films and whatever. Different opinions, but I think we would have enthusiastically kind of critiqued each other's views and stuff. But sometimes he does say things which, like, he says, this is better than the Michael Bay movies because there are no annoying kids in it. Well, there's one kid in it. And it's like, that's such a, I find that like such a weird criticism. Like, it's better because there are no annoying kids in it. Like, as if the only problem with the Michael Bay films is, like, there might be an annoying kid at certain points. What about everything else? What about the fact that it's too in your face? Like, the Michael Bay ones are too big and they're too loud and the script is too meandering and the colours are off and it's hard to differentiate between what's an Autobot and what's a Decepticon. And I mean, I quite like the first Michael Bay Transformers. I like it more than most people I speak to, actually. But there are more problems with it than that. And I think if you're going to say this is better than that, give some actual reasons why this is better than that, as opposed to just, there are no annoying kids in it. Well, Daniel's in this, but yeah, he's not annoying. He's awesome. If you're going to ride, Dano, ride in style. That's a line from this film.
but my eyes and my brain can be critical sometimes, and I can't help but turn it off. So there's a scene in the movie where the Autobots are underwater and they're like fighting these.
Did you hear that? That's another one. My eyes and my brain can be critical sometimes, and I can't help but turn it off. Did he say? I'm sure that's not what he said. But what do you mean your eyes and your eyes and your mind are critical sometimes? Of course they are. That's why you're a film critic. That's why you're on YouTube critiquing movies. That's what you do as a creative person. You think that's not good. I would fix that if I made a movie. Chris's eyes and mind are critical all the time. That's not it's not sometimes. And that's not a criticism, you know. It's good that he has a mind like that.
These monsters, and they're fine. They don't need oxygen. But later in the movie, Galvatron is like choking out one of them. I'm like, why are you choking him? Like, he doesn't need oxygen. What is choking a robot going to do?
Yeah, it's exactly. A good point. You could make the argument because I think he says something. He says, "I'll rip out your optics." So I think he's crushing his neck and he's gonna rip the wires out of him. And this happens a few times in the movie. Speaking of it being dark, I mean, one of the first scenes when he's Megatron, an Autobot grabs his leg, saying "please," and Megatron says, "Such heroic nonsense," and then he blows him away with an arm cannon. So in that scene, yeah, no, it is ridiculous. Chris is right, but you could make the argument because of what he says. "I'll rip out your optics." I think it's that scene that he's crushing his neck and he's gonna tear things out of it.
What a plot hole! A massive, horrible plot hole. Continuity error that no one cares about.
Yeah, in fairness, I can't think. It's been a while since I've seen it, but there are probably other plot holes because it's Transformers. That's probably not the biggest. It's probably got a lot of inconsistencies, but yeah, no one cares because it's an 80s cartoon, isn't it? That's the vibe.
So like I said, this movie is perfectly enjoyable if you view it as a gap between season 2 and season 3
what?
of the show.
What do you mean, as if you view it as a gap? Perfectly enjoyable. It's one of the most breathtaking looking animated movies. Fucking hell, it's something you can literally take. You could show it to a kid and go, this is what stuff was like for kids in the 80s. This is a time machine, a time capsule, which has all the colour, all the energy, all the vibe, all the music, all the intensity, all the pace of what it was like to wake up on a Saturday morning as a kid. And it has the dialogue too. He hasn't mentioned the fact that it's got a really, really good script. I mean, the lines are very well honed. You've got those like the confrontation between Optimus and Megatron. One shall stand, one shall fall. Why throw away your life so recklessly? That's a question you should ask yourself, Megatron. Never. I mean, I know that it's like it's kind of comic book cliche, let's say, but it's still well written. You can't deny it. You got it's cool. It's 80s cool. It's not improvised. Stuff like Hot Rod calling, I forget his name. He calls him Old Timer, and the character says, "Old Timer, that's something you'll never be if you don't watch your mouth," right? And it's well written. These lines stay with you. It's well written and it's got good actors and it's well delivered, right? There's stuff in that movie where purely based upon vibe, it has been in my head for my whole life. I still say dumb things like, "Now all we need is a little energon and a lot of luck." I know it's stupid, but it's directed well enough that especially when you're a kid, it seems so serious. There's nothing in the Michael Bay movies like that. There's nothing in most modern movies like that because they aren't written to be made like this. And when you're going to fucking animate a film, they make sure the script is tight before they start working on it. So, come on, Chris. He hasn't even mentioned the script.
Just kind of watch it through and feel like you're already with these characters and you feel some investment there. You're going to have fun with it on that level, but if you're just watching this as an adult for the first time, you've never really watched the show like me, you're probably going to feel a little polarized by it and wonder what all the hype is about, but it's still perfectly enjoyable. And the animation, even though it is heavily inspired by anime, and it does feel kind of...
I've already said it, but it's not inspired by anime. It is anime. What does he think anime was back. They didn't even call anime then. It was manga. And the VHSs were manga home entertainment, right? Manga comic books. Anime is a newer term, but the name came out of it being Japanese animation. And that's what it is. It's Japanese animation. So it is anime. It's not inspired.
Blatant that it's like obviously totally anime inspired. It's enjoyable enough to watch where you can have a good time with it. I'm going to give the Transformers, the movie, a B-.
That's a very high score for what was a pretty bad review. Like, he didn't give it much praise. He said nothing about the script. He said nothing about the direction. He said nothing about the animation. He said nothing about one of the most integral things about... I mean, he said nothing about the 80s and the vibe and all that stuff, but he said nothing about... All right, spoiler alert, right? It has one of the most famous moments in the history of 80s cartoons, television, film, for any kid of that era, because that movie has such balls that it took every kid's favourite character, Optimus Prime, and kills him within like the first 10 minutes, right? They literally fucking murdered the kid's favourite character who they all came to see in the opening like 10 minutes. And Chris hasn't mentioned it. Like, do you know what that does to a kid? Like, imagine if your favourite character is Bart Simpson and you're 8 years old and you go to the cinema and they fucking kill Bart in the first 10 minutes of the movie. And then you have to deal with it for the rest of the film. Like, that's unbelievably powerful stuff to put a kid through that. And you have to learn that he will be replaced. And Hot Rod is the young kid who then has to learn, you know, things for himself and overcome loss. And in your own way as a kid, it's not serious loss, but it's you know, it's not real life loss, but it's still like kids were fucking crying, right? I've read about kids in the cinema in America who were crying at the scene. I didn't get to see it in the cinema, unfortunately, but how can you not mention that? That's an unbelievable like thing for them to have had the balls to try in a movie like that. If it was only to sell toys, like, granted, they would have sold other toys once they put Prime aside for a bit, but anyway, he did come back. Optimus Prime will return. But it doesn't change the fact that they killed him in the first 10 minutes, and it's an amazing fight. I mean, it's the ultimate fight you've been waiting for. As a kid, you've been waiting for like 3 years to see the ultimate showdown between Megatron and Optimus, and you go to the cinema as a kid and you think the movie is obviously going to end with the fight between Optimus and Megatron. And what happens? Instead, you get the fight in the first 10 minutes, and oh my god, Optimus Prime not only loses, but he dies. He fucking dies. It's unbelievable. It's amazing that they took that kind of a risk and went with it. And Chris hasn't mentioned it. It's crazy.
I hope you like my new set. This is going to be where I film all of my classic movie reviews from now on. Whenever I do a review of an older film, it's going to be here. I also built a new set for Hilariosities right over there that I'll start using whenever I do Hilariosities from now on. Of course, my new release reviews and anime and games and stuff like that will be back at my older set. And I like the idea of having an interchangeable set. It helps.
I don't think he's going to say anything else about Transformers.
And it's just fun. I enjoy building things like this, and it was a lot of fun to build. So guys, thank you so much as always for watching. Look forward to my reviews of Transformers, Revenge of the Fallen, and Transformers Dark of the Moon. I'm going to enjoy doing it, and I'm going to enjoy doing it for you guys. You guys are the best. Thank you very much for watching, and if you like this, you can click right.
I bet you wouldn't say that about me. You guys are the best. Except George. Fuck that guy. No, I still really like Chris. I think he seems like... I reckon, like I said, if I met him face to face and we had this conversation, he'd probably go, yeah, that's true, actually. I didn't think about it like that. I didn't think as a huge Transformers fan. I mean, he's a huge X-Files fan. I'm a huge X-Files fan. So I'm sure if I said to him, Chris, imagine going to the fucking cinema to watch X-Files and... Did I just say that? X-Files? Yeah, imagine going to the cinema to watch X-Files and Mulder gets killed in the first 10 minutes of the movie. What that would have done to you. He would understand where I'm coming from. And he did say, you know, he's an outsider on the sort of Transformers stuff. But so was I. I mean, as a kid, I don't know. I love that movie. I definitely think he's missed out so many amazing things about it, and he gave a high score to what, when he reviewed it, it seemed like a low review. Anyway, that's the end of this video because I'm just going to rattle on. Transformers the movie, the animated movie, is the only real Transformers movie. If you want to see a Transformers movie, watch that film. It's epic, and it has one of the best soundtracks to a movie of all time. Like literally one of the best of all time, and the music is incredibly well paced. It's incredibly well toned. Like there are certain sequences, the way that it builds up and builds up, it's quite difficult in like Quentin Tarantino fashion to take pop songs and rock songs and put them into a movie and make it blend, right? It's something I criticize Spike Lee for. He tries it often and sometimes hits it, and sometimes it's like, this music's really inappropriate, it shouldn't be here. Transformers the movie does a fantastic job of taking real like uplifting hair metal 80s inspirational power ballad music and putting it to screen in a way which has created a film that is essentially like a time capsule, which successfully captured that very unique and uplifting spirit of the 80s. That's my review of the movie with his review of the movie. So I hope you like this video, and you can keep watching me and you can keep watching him, because yeah, he still seems like a cool guy to me. Anyway, thanks very much. Take care. Bye-bye.